Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, doctor. Good afternoon. We can hear you.
Right. Okay. Uh, we will start the session. Actually, the session that I'll be covering for you today, I hope you can see the slides that I have put here, the slide. So the topic that I'll be covering here would be the tips for successfully publishing your research article. Now, actually, I recently obtained my PhD from Lincoln University College. So I thought, during the past few years, the experience I gained in publishing my research articles, I should share uh, with you all because I know you all are following some sort of academic program, maybe a postgraduate or an undergraduate. And as part of your academic uh, program, you are expected to publish a certain number of research articles. And perhaps there is a condition that you need to publish in a reputed journal, for example, in maybe a Scopus Index journal. And therefore, I thought, let me share with you certain tips on certain maybe pitfalls that I actually encountered. Let me share with you today during the next couple of hours. Okay, so my name is Gangani Vikramasinghe, and I will be actually, first of all, I will be basically talking to you about the various types of journal articles that you as scholars will be writing. And then before we actually try to select journals, it is always better if you have an idea about the various metrics that are used by these journals to measure their ranking, their reputation, their quality, and so on, so that you get an idea as to what type of journal that you have selected to publish your article. And then, of course, I will be giving you some tips on what to consider when choosing your journal and some tips when you are writing and submitting your research article. And finally, I will be just touching upon some AI tools that you can actually use in order to help uh, with your academic writing and throughout your research journey. So let's first of all look at the types of journals that you can basically write and publish in a certain journal. So mostly what we do here is we actually publish articles based on our own original research. That means already you may have basically found out some sort of research gap, and based on the research gap you would have come up with various research questions, and then maybe the research objectives and the hypotheses, and maybe you would have developed a certain conceptual framework, and you would have collected some data and analyzing the data, and finally coming up with your findings. So you may want to share your research findings, so that can be put in the form of a research article. So this is what we as scholars, this is what we actually uh, do most of the time. Other than that, you can always go for review articles. That means maybe very critically analyze the already published articles within the scope of your research area, and you can find out what the others have actually found out and critically analyze and publish your own article based on the various findings of the other researchers. Basically, we say that they are review articles and we say we are synthesizing the findings. So such articles are also accepted by various journals and accepted by the academic programs as well. Or you may go for case studies where you may just concentrate on one particular company, maybe one particular maybe university, or even in case of say medical research, you can even consider just one particular patient or one person and the medical history of that particular person. So such articles also can be written and published. Then, of course, I think in most of the academic programs, the scholars are expected to present their research in conferences. So again, the conference papers can be original research, can be review articles, or they can be case studies. And of course, they can be conceptual papers as well, where you can actually go through the existing theoretical frameworks and conceptual frameworks, and you can always maybe extend those theoretical frameworks or conceptual frameworks, or you can come up with your own frameworks and present it as an article. So I have just given here just a few, but there are of course various other types of journal articles, such as maybe book reviews and data papers. So those also can be basically published in various journals, but most of the time scholars are actually into these few types of journal articles. So next, let me actually go through some of the metrics that are used by journals to measure their quality and reputation and ranking. Because we know that when it comes to the academic world, when it comes to these journals, we know that some of the journals are considered as top class journals or high ranked journals, while some journals are not so. So if you have done a lot of research and if you have written your paper, put in a lot of hard work, you would definitely would want to publish your article in a reputed journal. So how do we actually um, find out whether the journal that you have selected is the right journal for you, whether it is of high repute or not? So let me first of all show you. Now this is actually the Scopus website, right? Scopus is actually a database which has actually indexed a large number of research articles and journals uh, to help us actually to search for articles, maybe by title or maybe by the publisher or maybe by various specialization areas. So usually Scopus is actually handled by a Sphere company, and Scopus is a database, right? And in this database, there are many articles that have been indexed. So we call it as indexing because the data that is available here is easily searchable, right? If you want to search an article by name or category or maybe by even published date or whatever, it's easy to search and find out your article, or basically first of all your journal, and through your journal your articles. So what I have shown you here is actually the Scopus database. Now if you want to publish your articles in a Scopus index journal, this is where you have to come first of all, scopus.com/sources, and you can always enter the title of the journal, or if you're not sure about the title, maybe you can search through the subject areas. If your subject area is, for example, education, you can search through all the education journals and all. And what I would like to show you here is, now when you get this list of journals, along with this list, there are some metrics that have been mentioned. We have what is called as the CITE score, highest percentile, the number of citations, the documents, and SNIP, SJR. So I would like to kind of go through some of these most commonly used metrics so that you will get an idea about, when you select a journal, what are these metrics, and in terms of that journal, what type of reputation or quality that journal has. So I will go through these metrics one by one. So let me first of all start with the impact factor. Now, impact factor or journal impact factor is actually a measure of the average number of citations that have been received by each article that is published in a certain journal over a period of 2 years. So here the time frame is 2 years. So now if I actually further explain this definition actually, now when you calculate an impact factor, first of all, you calculate the impact factor for a particular year. For example, you can if you want, you can calculate the impact factor for 2024 or 2023 and so on. So let's assume that you are calculating for the year 2024. So in that case, if you want to calculate the impact factor for, let's say, the journal X, right? For hypothetically, we will say we are trying to calculate the impact factor of journal X for the year 2024. So if you want to calculate the impact factor, there are two things that you will have to basically find out. First of all, you'll have to find out how many articles were published by this journal X in the year 2023 and 22. That means during the previous 2 years, the preceding 2 years, considering the year that you are calculating. So if you are calculating the impact factor for 2024, then the preceding 2 years will be 2023 and 2022. So you will have to find out how many articles have been published by the journal X in the year 2023 and year 2022. So let's say, for example, in year 2023, journal X published 250 articles, and in year 2022, let's assume it published 130 articles. So altogether, during the preceding 2 years, it has published 280 journals, 280 articles. So that is what you have got here as the total number of articles published in journal X during the previous 2 years. Next, you need to find out among these 280 articles, how many citations were received by these 280 articles in the year 2024, right? So we are talking about the citations that have been received in the year that we are trying to calculate the impact factor for. So we are trying to calculate the impact factor for year 2024. So we need to find out how many citations were received in year 2024 for the 280 articles that were published during 2023 and 2022. So let's assume in year 2023, for the 250 articles, 450 citations were received. And in the year 2022, for the 130 articles, let's assume 300 citations were received. So altogether, we have a total number of citations as 750. So that would be the total number of citations received in the year 2024 or the year A by the articles that have been published in the journal X during the preceding 2 years. So all you have to do is, in that case, just divide this total number of citations received by the total number of documents, and you will be getting the impact factor. So the impact factor is actually annually calculated by Clarivate Analytics, the company, and this is calculated for all the journals that are indexed in Web of Science database. So Web of Science, Google Scholar, Scopus, these are all reputed databases that keep track of indexes the reputed journals and their articles. So this is a matrix that is calculated by Clarivate, and usually an impact factor higher means it is a good journal. So, for example, now we have got in our example an impact factor as 2.7 when we calculate. So, for our hypothetical journal X for the year 2024. So, what does this indicate? That on the average, each article that has been published by journal X during the years 2022 and 23 has received 2.7 citations. So this is basically an average. So you have to realize that because this is an average, maybe some of the articles that were published by Journal X during 2022 or 2023 have received more than 2.7 citations on, for example, maybe 5 citations or 6 citations, while there may be certain articles that have been published by Journal X during these 2 years that have not received a single citation. So remember, this is an average. So this is an average which indicates that each article in Journal X that has been published during the preceding years have received a certain number of citations. So more the number of more value or a higher value you have got for an impact factor, that means you can say that the journal has a certain repute. So similar to actually the impact factor, site score is also a matrix that is calculated mainly to determine the ranking and maybe to determine the recognition of the journals. So site score is actually, it is calculated by Elsevier for the journals that are indexed in Scopus database. And what is different about impact factor and site score is that now impact factor considers the articles that have been published within a 2-year period, whereas site score considers a 4-year period. Articles published during a 4-year period. So that's basically the difference. Other than that, the calculation is the same. So here again, for example, if we consider that if we are calculating the site score for the year 2024 for Journal X, now we have to consider 4 years preceding 2024. That means we'll have to consider 2023, 22, 21, and 20. And once again, we have to find out how many articles were published during these 4 years. And for these articles that were published within those 4 years, in 2024, that is the year that you are calculating the site score for. So during this 2024 period, how many citations were received for these articles that have been published during the preceding 4 years. So once again, the calculation is just the same as the impact factor, with the exception that we are considering 4 years. So here, for example, if we consider the number of articles that have been published by Journal X in the years 2023, 22, 21, and 20 as a total of 500. And let's assume for these 500 articles in the year 2024, we have received 1,170 citations. Then, of course, we just need to divide the 1,170 by 500 in order to get the site score. So again, a higher number for the site score means it is a good journal, it is a recognized journal. So here again, a site score, for example, now in this example, we have got 2.34. So that means for the Journal X in 2024, a site score of 2.34 indicates that on the average, each of the articles that were published by Journal X during these 4 years have at least received 2.34 citations for the year 2024. So again, as I mentioned before, during this period, some of the articles may have received more than 2 citations. They may have received 5 or 6 citations, while during this period, there may be certain articles that may have not got a single citation or have got just 1 citation. But here we are considering the overall average. So it is just an average value that we get. And we say that for each article, we can expect to have received 2.34 or whatever the CITE score that we have got. So therefore, basically, impact factor and CITE score more or less the same. So now, when you consider the CITE score, because the period that we are considering is a little bit longer, the duration is longer than the impact factor. Now, there are certain certain fields where the research publication itself takes a bit of time. So in such specialization areas or fields, CITE score would be a better metric to consider because it has a longer period to cover, to consider. So in that case, let's move on to the next metric. We call it as the SCImago Journal Rank. And again, this is also calculated by Elsevier for the Scopus Index journals. Now, unlike the impact factor and the CITE score, SCImago Journal Rank, the calculation is not so straightforward, right? It actually considers not just the number of citations that has been received by the articles of a certain journal, but the value, the metric value itself is kind of varied depending on a certain weighted calculation based on the citations that have been made by high-ranked journals or low-ranked journals. Now, for example, let's say we are considering, again, let's say we are considering the journal X. So if you are considering the articles that are published in journal X, if a certain article has been cited by a high-ranked journal, say, article in a high-ranked journal, then this weighted calculation that is made to calculate the SJR is higher. But let's say a certain article that is published in journal X is cited by an article that is in a journal that is of a low ranking. Then the weighted calculation that, or the weighted value that is given is low. So here, basically, the SJR actually is a metric that shows how prestigious or how recognized a journal is. So higher the SJR means the articles of that journal have been cited by high-ranked, have been cited by articles that are in high-ranked journals. But if you have a low SJR, that means the articles in that journal have been cited by articles that are in low-ranked journal. So higher the SJR means more prestigious the journal is. So that is basically about SJR. Then let's move on to SNIP. SNIP means source normalized impact per paper. Now here again, the SNIP is calculated by considering not just the number of citations, but you can see it is calculated based on what type of journal it has, what type of journals have cited these articles. So this is also calculated by Elsevier. Now, if I actually take an example here, and And if I just go through the calculation of SNIP, what it does is it actually compares the average citations of the journal that you have selected with the average citations that you consider in the articles that are published in journals of the same field as your journal X. Now, for example, let's say journal X is in the education field. So we know that there are many other journals that belong to the education field. So what it does is it compares the average citations per articles in journal X with the average citations per article in all the other journals, right? The other journals in the education field. So that means you are comparing your journal with the other journals that are in the same field to see how relatively your journal is performing with respect to the other journals in the same field. So let's say, for example, an SNIP of say 1 is indicated for your journal, the journal that you have selected. So that means your journal is actually performing in the same way as the other journals in the same field. That means the average number of citations that the journal that you have selected, the average citations is more or less the same as the average citations that have been received by the other journals in the same field. But if you have an SMP value of more than 1, that means the journal that you have selected is performing better than the other journals in the same field, because your journal seems to be having a higher average number of citations than the other journals in your same specialization area. And of course, if you have an SMP value of less than 1, that means relatively, as compared to the other journals in your field, the journal that you are selected is getting a lesser average as the number of citations, or in other words, it's performing lesser in terms of number of citations than the other journals in the same specialization field. So SNIP basically is used as a comparison to see how well your journal is performing, whether it's performing better than the other journals in the field, or whether it is performing lesser than the other journals in terms of average citations, or whether it is performing in the same sort of level as the other journals in the same specialization areas. So performance here is measured in terms of the average number of citations. So next we have percentile. Percentile is actually again a very good metric that we can consider when we are trying to find out how prestigious or what is the rank of your journal. So basically percentile actually gives how a journal is ranked in relation to the other journals in your same specialized area. So let's look at this example. As we know now, cite score, of course, means the number of citations that have been received in the preceding years, 4-year period, divided by the number of documents or the number of articles that have been published during the 4-year period. So the number of citations divided by the number of documents, you of course get the cite score. Now, with the cite score, usually if you look at the Scopus website, you will see that there is a column called percentiles column. This, with the percentile, there is actually a percentage as well as values such as maybe 67 by 304. So first of all, what is this? 67 divided by 1304. It is actually not a calculation, but it shows the ranking of your journal, right? So here again, we are considering journal X. So what does this tell us? That let's assume the journal X belongs to this education categorization or specialization area. And let's assume there are 1304 journals indexed under Scopus in the same specialization area. That means there are 1304 journals that belongs to the education field. So 67 actually is the rank given to your journal. So how is this ranking done? Either using CiteScore, when it comes to the Scopus database, CiteScore is used, and SGR is used for Web of Science database. So what CiteScore, what we have to remember here that is the CiteScore is actually in descending order sorted, and the ones with the highest CiteScore is ranked as number 1, and the one with the lowest CiteScore is ranked right at the bottom among the journals that belong to a certain specialization area. So here, 1304 journals have been considered. So based on the CiteScore, they have been actually sorted in descending order and ranked from 1 to 1304. And according to the CiteScore, according to the ranking, Journal X has received the rank as 67. So in other words, 67 indicates that there are 66 more journals better than Journal X. And of course, there are 1,237. That means 1,304 minus 67. We get the remaining number of journals. So we can say that 1,237 journals are below Journal X in terms of ranking. So based on this ranking, the percentile is calculated. How is it calculated? The remaining number of journals divided by the total number of journals. That means the remaining in the sense, the journals that are performing lesser than your journal divided by the total number of journals into 100, we get the percentile. So again, percentile also indicates that 6% of the journals within this specialization area is performing better or is more recognized than Journal X or is reputed than Journal X, while you can say this Journal X is, you can say that this journal is ranking better than 94% of the total number of journals. So if you have a higher percentile, that means the better your journal is performing. That means it's a high rank journal, higher the percentile is. So with that, along with the percentile, there is another metric that is very often considered, that is the quartile. Now, if you again look at the Scopus website, you can see that here you have first quartile, second quartile, third quartile, and fourth quartile, and so on. And you have here the percentiles. So there is actually a relationship between the percentiles and the quartiles. Now, what do you mean by quartiles? Now, your journals, the total number of journals are actually ranked or categorized together and categorized into 4 different groups. So the 4 groups are actually called as Q1 or quartile 1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. So what does Q1 mean or quartile 1 mean? So when you rank the journals that are in the same specialization area from the best or the journals that are having the highest site score right at the top, and the journals which are having a lower site score right at the bottom, the first 25% of the journals after ranking will be considered as belonging to quartile 1. So these are the topmost journals, the most reputed journals, the best journals in that field. Then the next 25% of the journals fall into the Q2 quartile, and the next 25% into Q3, and the bottom 25% of the journals with the least site scores will fall into the Q4 quartile. So, for example, let's say in a certain specialization area, right? Let's assume you are talking about gender studies or something, a specialization area, where let's assume that there are 100 journals under that specialization area. So based on the site score, if these 100 journals are ranked from the best site score to the lowest site score in descending order, when they are ranked from 1 to 100, from the topmost ranked journal to the journal that is ranked 25th will fall to the first quartile. That means Q1. These are the ones with the highest site score. Then the journals that are ranked between 26 and 50, they will fall to Q2. 51 to 75 to Q3, because as always we are considering 25%, 25%, 25% for each category. So Q3 will consist of the journals that are ranked from 51 to 75, and right at the bottom with the journals that are having the least site score, that means ranked from 76 to 100, will have or will belong to quartile 4. Now, especially when you are looking for a Scopus Index journal to publish your articles, always it's really good if you can publish in a Q1 journal, because those are the most reputed. But if you feel that you are still new to the research area, you can always try for Q2 and Q3, and maybe in the Q4 category also, maybe some of the journals that are at the top level of the Q4 journals. You can always try out. So always try to remember that higher the quartile, that means Q1 means the journals that have the highest prestige, while Q4 are the journals that have the least site score and therefore not so reputed. So I told you right at the beginning, the quartiles and the percentiles also have their relationship. So a quartile Q1 journal means if you consider the percentiles in terms of percentiles, all the journals that belong to the 75th percentile or above will fall under the Q1 category. Between 50th percentile and 74.9 percentile will fall to Q2. And then from 25th to 49.9 percentile will fall to Q3. And any percentile less than the 25th percentile will fall under Q4 category. So as soon as you see a percentile, you'll be able to identify, okay, this particular journal will belong to this particular quartile. But of course, there is a certain, you have to be a little bit cautious on this, because now if you consider a particular journal, a journal can be categorized or can belong to several categories. Now, for example, let's say journal X belongs to the education category as well as communication category. So let me just go back to the Scopus site. Here you can see I have considered a certain journal called as the TEM journal. So here you can see under education, the percentile that it has received is 51st. But if you consider the categorization or the specialization area information systems, the journal is ranked as the, say, 266 among 394 journals, and therefore has received a percentile of 32. So you have to basically check, depending on the category or depending on the specialization area. You have to remember that the percentiles will change, and therefore the quartiles also will change. The ranking will change, the percentiles will change, and the quartiles also will change. So here, if we take an example where, let's assume journal X belongs to two categories. Education category, where it has received the 83rd percentile, and communication, under the category communication, it has received the 42nd percentile. So under education, it is performing better. That means 83% of the journals are actually below journal X, or it is performing better, 83% of the other journals. But when it comes to the communication category, it is performing at a lower level. So if you consider the 83rd percentile, that means it will belong to the Q1 quartile. But if you are considering in terms of the category communication, it has got 42nd as the percentile, so it will belong to the Q3 quartile. So remember, when you consider a journal also, based on the different categories it can belong to, there will be different percentiles, there will be different rankings, and of course, based on that, the quartiles also will be different. Okay, now in that case, let's move on to some of the key considerations when you choose your journal. Now, first of all, now if you're specially trying to get your article to be published in a Scopus Index journal or any journal for that matter, the number one thing for you to remember is when you are choosing your journal, always check the journal scope. That means what sort of topics will this journal accept? And does the scope of the journal match the article that I have written? This is the most important aspect you have to remember when you are choosing your journal. Otherwise, remember, right at the editor's check, your article will be rejected. If your article does not align with the journal scope, that is the first step where you will get the rejection. So if you are not sure about whether your article actually matches the journal scope, what you can do is actually, you can basically go to your journal and look at the aims and scope and read it out and see whether the scope that is mentioned in the website is matching with yours. If you are not sure about it, always check the articles that have been already published by going into maybe you can check the archives, or you can even check the current issues of the journal and read a few articles. That's my best advice. Read a few articles that have already been published in this journal that you have selected, and see whether there are certain articles that match your area of specialization or match the scope that you have considered. So once you are sure about your article matching with your journal scope, then that means that should be a journal that you should consider. Then the second, of course, point is you need to consider the journal's quality and reputation. So I have already gone through the metrics that are usually used. So you can always check the quartile, the percentile, the site scores, and things like that. So once again, just remember, if you are aiming for a Scopus Index journal, don't always select the fourth quartile. Don't always select the fourth quartile, which has the bottom, the journals, because now sometimes you might feel, right, you might not have the confidence to go for a quartile 1 journal or a quartile 2 journal or so on. And you might think, okay, I have a better chance if I select a journal that is in the fourth quartile. But don't always do that, because there is a danger that in the next year, your journal may not be actually listed in the Scopus database. And if your university has the requirement that you need to publish your article in a Scopus Index journal, then you will be in trouble, because remember, publishing an article takes a long time, sometimes even 6 months to 1 year. So you might, in a quartile 4 journal, you might try to publish. But by the time your article is published, it may not be actually listed out in the Scopus, because it's right at the bottom quartile, and there's a danger that it will come out of the fourth quartile also. So my advice to you is, don't always go for the last or bottom quartile. Go for, if you are not very sure about quartile 1, at least quartile 2 or quartile 3 journals. Then always, when you are selecting a journal, especially if you are looking for a journal that is indexed by Scopus, check whether the years are current, the current year is actually covered by Scopus, and whether the ISSN and the EISSN that is listed in Scopus website matches with the ISSN and the EISSN that is mentioned in the website of that journal. So let me just quickly explain to you that as well. Now, if you consider the TEM journal, you can see that it is covered from 2017 to 2025. So this is the current, it is listed out in the current year, 2025. So if you have any plans of publishing this article in the TEM journal, okay, at the moment, this year, it is listed out. But if you take a look at this example, where this particular journal has been listed out from 96 to 2014 and on and off again for some time, and then only from 2020 to 22. So if you try to publish your article in this type of journal, that means this is an article that is not currently listed out as a Scopus Index journal. So again, if you have that requirement where your university is telling you to publish in a Scopus Index journal, this type of journal will not help you, because currently it is not listed in Scopus or indexed in Scopus. So be very careful when you select a journal, whether it is covered by the current year, whether it's covered by the current year 2000, if you are in 2025, whether it is covered in 2025. Because as I mentioned previously about the fourth quartile, can you see that from on and off, certain journals are not listed under Scopus, and there is therefore, especially those who are in the fourth quartile, have this type of pattern where during certain years they come out of the Scopus list. Sometimes they are again listed in. So there is a danger that in the next year it might not get listed. So this is another way of showing you that you have to be very careful when you select the quartile of your journal as well, right? So always remember, there's a danger for the journals listed in the fourth quartile to move out of Scopus in the following years. So first of all, look and see whether it is listed out in the current year. Next, I told you, you need to check the ISSN numbers that are listed under Scopus, and you need to check whether it is actually mentioned in the journal website as well, right? So, for example, let's say you are moving to this STEM journal. So here, right at the top, you can see the ISSN and EISSN. Now, why I'm telling you this is that now sometimes there can be journals or there can be websites that have journal names quite similar to the journal names listed out under Scopus. And you might mistakenly go into one of those websites, and you might try to publish your article in that particular journal. But unfortunately, it may not be listed in or may not be recognized as a Scopus Index journal. Because there are so many websites that we can call as bogus websites that actually try to imitate the website or the authentic website. So just to make sure that you have arrived at the correct journal website, just double check on the ISSN numbers to make sure that name-wise you have not made any mistake about selecting your journal, right? So always make sure you select the current year and check the ISSN with the Scopus site and the journal site. Then, of course, you need to check the acceptance duration of the manuscripts. Now, our aim is, as scholars, is to get our research work published or accepted as soon as possible. We all would like to get our decision whether our article has been accepted by a certain journal or not as soon as possible. We don't want to stay for 3-4 months just to hear that it has been rejected. But that is the sad reality. There are certain journals, especially very reputed journals, that take a long time just to give you the first editor's decision. And of course, the peer review process also might take in such a reputed journal for another, say, 3 to 4 months. And altogether, just to get whether your article has been accepted or not, it might take about 6 to 7 months. So just to see whether your article can be published as soon as possible, you can always check the speed or the acceptance duration. Now, when you go to the journal website, always check for that. Now here, of course, it says 14 days from submission to first decision. That means the editor's decision whether to proceed with the peer review or not will take 2 weeks. And it says just to get the decision after the peer review takes on the average 78 days. That means it could be something even more than that. Again, if you want to double check whether the duration is reasonable or not, you can always go into one or two articles that have already been published and see whether those articles. Now, when you consider each article, you have this inside your article, it is mentioned the accepted date, the revised date, published date, and so on. So you can just double check and see how long it has taken actually for you to how long it had taken for that article to be published. Now, let's say, for example, if I just randomly take one article, you can see here the receive date is 17th July 2024 and the revised date is 21st January 2025. So can you see there is about a 6-7 months gap, and after revision acceptance is about 1 month and then just a few days for publishing. So this is exactly what I am telling. Just check and see after you send, how long does it take for the review process. So you can just go to a few of the articles and check this out. Shorter the duration, the better. If there are journals that take a longer period, that means most likely your article also, just to get a decision for your article, it would take a long time. So always check these dates and see whether your article can be accepted with the shortest possible duration. Because we are in a hurry. We need to complete our maybe our postgraduate, we need to complete the submission of various articles to maybe go for the next promotion in our institute, in our workplace. So whatever it may be, we would always like to get an answer from the journal as soon as possible. So always when you are choosing for a journal, check the acceptance duration. Shorter acceptance durations would be the better. Then, of course, ensure that the journal is indexed in a relevant database. For example, whether it is indexed in Scopus or Web of Science, because this is again important. If you have a requirement in your academic course that you need to publish a Scopus index or Web of Science journal, you need to have, let's say, a Scopus index article indexed in Scopus index journals, then that requirement you need to, of course, double check. So you can always check using the Scopus website. You can just search and find out, and you can go to the the journal website also and check the what are the databases that your journal is indexed in, and see whether it is indexed in the journal that you want to double check. to make sure that you are trying to publish in the correct journal. Why is this actually important? Why do actually these academic programs actually insist that scholars actually publish in reputed journals, right? Reputed journals that are indexed in, let's say, for example, Scopus. Why is that? Because if you publish your articles in reputed journals, then it is actually very easy to find your work by other researchers. Your article will be read more and, of course, cited more, which is good for you. And of course, if you always select a journal that is indexed in a reputed or a prominent database, then of course that also adds quality or significance to your journal. That means your journal is a reputed journal if it is indexed in a reputed database. So that's why it is important that you always look for journals that are indexed in reputed databases like Scopus, Web of Science. And if you are able to publish your articles in such journals, then it's very likely that your articles will be read more by your peers or your other researchers in the same field. And it's more likely that you will get more recognition for your work. Then, of course, when you are searching for your journals, always make sure that you consider the acceptance rate. Acceptance rate is also very important because that just tells us whether you have a chance of getting accepted, your article getting accepted. So here, for example, this particular journal, Classroom Discourse, has a 19% acceptance rate. That means if 100 articles are being sent to this journal, only 19 will be accepted. So higher the acceptance rate means, again, more chance you'll be having at your article being accepted. Then, of course, you need to check whether your article has been, what sort of review process it will go through. Whether it will be a single blind process or a double blind process, or whether it's a peer, for example, when it comes to the peer review, whether it's a single blind process, that means only the reviewer knows the author, but the author doesn't know the reviewer, or both parties don't know each other, that is the double blind review process. So whatever it may be, you need to check this out also, because peer-reviewed journals have more recognition. And I think your academic course will also demand you to publish your articles in peer-reviewed journals. So check that out. Then, of course, the publication frequency. Now, certain journals actually publish maybe just once per year, sometimes on a quarterly basis. So just find out what is the publication duration, frequency. Because if the journal that you are selecting has a higher publication frequency, that means every quarter or every month, that means you have, again, a good chance of getting your article published quickly. But let's say you are selecting a journal that has only one issue per year. The publication frequency is just once per year or twice per year. That means the publication period is lengthier, and therefore you might have to wait until your article gets published. So check about the publication frequency. Then always check whether your journal that you have selected is open access. What is open access? Such journals allow anybody to freely access the articles that they have published in their journals. excuse me. That means if it is open access and if you try to publish your article in an open access journal, that means more number of people get access to your article, more number of people will be reading your article, and there is a chance that there'll be more number of citations for your article and more recognition for you. But on the other hand, there are other journals that demand subscription access. That means in order to read the articles in that particular journal, a certain subscription fee has to be paid. So obviously, with that type of journal, the number of users who will be accessing such articles will be less. So always, if you want more number of people to read your articles, then go for open access journals. And finally, when you are selecting a journal, be careful about the publication fee, because some journals will say the publication fee or the article processing fee is it is free of charge. But there can be certain journals that can demand up to $1,500, maybe $2,000 as the article processing fee. So depending on how much you are ready to pay, just be careful, try to carefully read or go through the website of that journal and try to find out the article processing fee and see whether it is something that you are ready to pay or not. And then let's next move on to the key factors you need to consider when you are writing your article. Now, previously I was talking about when you are selecting your journal, what to consider. Next, let's see when you are preparing your manuscript, what are the things that you need to consider. So here I'm not going to go through the writing process actually, because I'm assuming that you all know it very well. And I'm just here to tell you certain areas that you need to concentrate or be careful about when you are preparing your manuscript, because these things also matter when you try to publish in a good journal. First of all, follow the guidelines or the instructions that are given by the journal. Some journals give you even a template to follow, and you have to use their template in order to write your article. Some journals will actually just give you an outline where they will say these are the areas that you have to cover. For example, there should be an introduction, there should be a literature review, methodology, and so on. And the font size is this, the font type is this, the margins should be this, and so on. That sort of guidelines will be given. Follow those guidelines to the dot, because when you send your article for publishing, the editor's review actually includes whether your article has been written according to their guidelines or not, whether you have followed their format or not. So if you have not followed their format, that is again one place where you might get a rejection. And of course, structure your paper according to their guidelines. So be careful, and every time, every step of the way, check with the guidelines. Then the next important factor for you to remember is have a very compelling and descriptive title for your article. This title should be very attractive, and this title should reflect your scope and depth and breadth of your research. Because if you don't have a good, attractive title for your article, that itself might be a point for rejection, because the editors, at the editor's check, they might think that this is not an article that should be even considered, or this is not an article that has gone into a lot of detail, or this is not an article that covers our scope. So be very careful about the title. Make sure it very clearly shows the depth and the breadth of your research, and definitely it should be very attractive to show that you have some solid work done in your research. So get the help of the supervisors if you are not sure about the title, and get their help, get their suggestions when you try to figure out an article, a title for your article. Then the next most important thing is clarity and conciseness in your writing. When the peer reviewers look at your article, all the points have to be very clear to them. Otherwise, they will be sending back as minor or major, modifications, that these sentences have to be changed, or these facts have to be changed because it is not clear. It should be explained in a better way or something. They might basically give as their opinion. If you don't very clearly explain your facts in the research article. So one of the best tools for you to do this is, wherever possible, use tables, graphs, and figures, because as we say, 1,000, one picture tells 1,000 words. So similarly, if you can present your data in tables, as graphs, and maybe as figures, rather than writing huge paragraphs, it would be a better way of communicating to the reader, and it would give them a better idea as to what you are trying to put across here. Then always check for grammar mistakes. When your article goes for peer review, one of the most important things that they look at is your grammar, your language. So always be careful. Get somebody to proofread your document before you send it. Always look at the grammar mistakes and correct them, and make sure that you have written in a very proper academic writing method, and it is very clear and concise. And always double check before you finalize your manuscript whether you have acknowledged all the reference materials, and whether you have used the appropriate referencing method, because some of the journals might say that you need to specify the references in APA format. Sometimes they might say IEEE format or Harvard referencing format. Again, read the guidelines that have been given by the journal and see what sort of referencing method you have to use, and double check one by one all your references and see whether you have acknowledged all the materials that you have used. Because there can be in the body of your document, the various references that you have mentioned, but in the list of references, it may be missing. So that would be another point for you to remember. Just go through one by one and see whether all have been cited properly. Then what reputed journals actually look at is whether you have used materials that are from reputed journals, whether the articles that you have referenced are from reputed journals, and whether they are recently written articles. So when you are actually referencing your materials, make sure that you choose your articles that you want to refer from reputed journals, and make sure that those articles have been recently written and published. Because as we know, if you are trying to, let's say you are trying to publish your article in 2025, but you have referenced materials that have been published in, say, 2000 or even in the 1990s and so on. So the journal, especially the reviewers might think such old reference materials might not reflect the correct situation in today's context. So that might be at a disadvantage to you. So always cite recent sources and always cite from credible, reputed journals. Then the next point is also very important. Reputed journals always look at plagiarism. At the editor's check right at the beginning, before it is sent for a peer review, your article is checked for plagiarism. And most of the journals will see whether the similarity index of your article is less than, say, 10%. If not, they will reject it or they will send it back to you asking for you to check for plagiarism and redo your work. So try to avoid plagiarism, and it is always better if you can, before you send, there are various softwares that can check for plagiarism. Some are free of charge. So you can just use one of those plagiarism detection softwares and double check before you send your manuscript to the journal for review. And of course, make sure that you pay attention to the journal deadlines, because any article that is received after the journal deadline will not be accepted. So that again will be a disadvantage to you. So well before the journal deadline, they will always, all the journals will announce for the next issue what is the last date for submission. So check that out and accordingly submit your work. And of course, you have to be very careful about the ethical consideration, because some of the journals will definitely ask for the ethical clearance of your work. They will ask for the ethical clearance or the ethical approval date, the reference number of your ethical clearance that you have got, the document. So before you actually send your manuscript to the journal, make sure that you have proper ethical clearance from the ethics committee of your university faculty, and accordingly, actually most of the journals require you to include an ethics statement inside in your manuscript. So make sure that you include that as well, because this is another area that all journals pay attention to. And finally, when you are the last point is, once you have submitted your article and if you have received certain comments from the reviewers, make sure that you address all the comments that have been received by the reviewers one by one. Whatever the comments that you agree with the reviewer, make the change, and accordingly in a separate document or inside the manuscript, you can add a small comment saying that this particular section has been changed according to this particular comment and so on. You can basically put a comment there about the change that you have done, or in a separate document, you can have the reviewer's comments and what you have, how you have addressed those comments. You can have your own statement there, so that it's very clear for each of the reviewer comments whether you have made the change, where you have made the change, how you have made the change. You can basically mention all that in a separate document. But remember here, it is not necessary for you to agree to all the comments that you receive. There may be certain comments that you get from the reviewer that you don't agree to. So don't be afraid to reject those comments. But you have to mention, as I told you, in a separate document or within your manuscript, you have to clearly justify why you don't agree with the reviewer and why you did not change according to the reviewer's comments. So remember, it's not always necessary for you to agree to the reviewer's comments, because there are certain comments that you may not, this is your research. You know more than the reviewers about your research. So you may have your personal justifications. So give those justifications if you don't agree with the reviewers. If you don't agree with the reviewers, don't think that your article will get rejected. No, it won't happen as long as you are able to justify it rationally, right? So keep that also in mind. But always address all the comments. Address all the comments and mention whether you have made the change or whether you are not in agreement because of these certain reasons. Okay, now when you are writing your articles and even for your thesis, I just thought I'll just mention, right, a certain set of AI tools that you can actually use to help you with the academic writing. Some of these tools I have actually personally used, and I actually found them very useful to me, especially to check my grammar, especially if I wanted to say maybe write in a very clearer or concise manner. These tools actually help you. Actually, there are many more. You can just search through the internet and you can find these different AI tools for academic writing. And you can basically try them out and you will realize that there'll be one or two of these AI tools that you personally prefer to use, because not all these would fit your purpose, right? You will have your personal preferences. So just try them out and see which one works best for you and keep that as your assistant or your helper when you are writing your documents. So you can just try a few of these. Some of these are free. Some of these have a free version, while it comes with a version where you can pay and get more features. But most of them, there is a free version, so that you can try them out and see. So basically, these softwares will actually help you, as I mentioned, will help you with correcting your grammar, to help you with the sentences, to get them in a more clear manner, your adjusting of your tone to suit your academic writing. And sometimes if you want to reduce or expand the sentences. Now, for example, let's say you have written an abstract that has 250 words, but a particular journal clearly says in its instructions that the abstract should be less than 100 words. So from 250 words to 100 words, how do you do that without compromising on any of the content? That means without compromising on the facts that you want to mention in the abstract. This type of software will help you, right? It would help you to basically write a sentence in a fewer words or in a more elaborate manner, help you with paraphrasing, and of course, help you with citation generation and for managing your references. Even for AI chat, just if you need to find out about something. Maybe you don't know the meaning of some word. You can, these actually softwares come with an AI chat. Plagiarism detection, some of these softwares come with that. As I mentioned previously, before submitting your articles, you can check for plagiarism and see whether it is under or within a certain reasonable value, the plagiarism, your similarity index. And of course, there are certain softwares that actually check to find out whether your document is ready for submission, because they will check whether your document has a proper abstract, whether it has the proper citations, whether it has the proper number of words in the article. All these submissions checks can be also done by these softwares. And to manage your references, you can always use a reference management tool, because these reference management tools not only generate citations according to the different types of referencing methods like APA or IEEE, but also helps you to group your various articles, and you can actually put them into different folders. And let's say for article 1, these are my references. For article 2, these are the references. And like that, you can basically manage your documents. So you have Mendeley, which is very popularly used actually in as a referencing management tool in academic world, and Zotero, EndNote. And there are, other than reference management tools, just citation generators. If you're just talking about one particular article, maybe rather than using a reference management tool, you can always look at a citation generator, where if you just want one particular source to be cited and you want to generate the reference for that, you can just use a citation generator. These are actually freely available. Scribr, BibMe, EasyBib, and so on. There are so many more. You can just get the help of those citation generators and reference management tools to help you to get the reference, the list of references in your article correctly and completely, without missing out any of the references. Okay, so with that, actually, I have come to the end. Is there anything that you would like to ask before we wrap up? Okay, then, thank you so much for joining. And I would like to thank Dr. Lubna and Ms. Priscilla for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you very much, Dr. Gangani. Please switch on your camera, everybody. We need to take a picture for the future references.